Welcome to Leaders of Life Sciences, the podcast where we spotlight the people shaping the future of pharma and biotech. Each episode, we speak with founders, senior execs, scientists, and strategists about how they lead, what drives them, and the real impact they're making on teams, organizations, and the lives of patients. If you want fresh insight into what great leadership looks like in life sciences, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hi, David. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Well, how are you?
It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. And for the listeners out there, David is the Chief Commercial Officer at BirdoTech. BirdoTech are a global leader in pharmaceutical innovation, drug discovery services. And David has over 2 decades of experience spanning leadership roles at industry giants like Merck, Thermo Fisher Scientific. And David has built a reputation as a visionary in commercial strategy, supply chain optimization, cross-cultural leadership, fluent in English, Chinese and German. Is that right, David? Any other languages to add to the list?
I think that's enough.
Fluent in all 3. I'm just about fluent in English, so you've already got a big step up on me. But David's not only a global executive, but a bridge builder across industries and regions. At BirdoTech, David is spearheading transformative initiatives that drive revenue growth, while also fostering innovation in the CRO CDMO space. And his expertise in sorting strategy, regulatory, compliance and BD has made him a pivotal figure in shaping the future of manufacturing. So David, welcome to the podcast. Out of interest, out of what we've been through, what gives you the most pride in that introduction?
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, and that is a fantastic introduction, and thank you for the warm welcome. What gives me the most pride, right, in that introduction is the acknowledgement of bridge building, both across the industries and then across cultures, right? And it is the one thing to drive strategy and revenue for the company, but it is another to connect people, align diverse teams, and then build trust across geographies. And that's where I find the real meaning in the work I do. And also be able to help the junior team member to find the footings, and seasoned professionals to leveling up has been one of the most rewarding aspects of my journey. Business results definitely matter, of course, but people make the journey worthwhile.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's.
So David, of what you said, you said connecting people and connecting teams is what lights you up the most and what you're most proud of. What is it about that you're so proud of, and why does that matter so much to you?
Right. It's about helping others grow, right? Whether it's junior team members and finding their footing, or seasoned professions try to leveling up, right? And then try so that's how I can share with them about my experience, right? And where the business result matters, but the people make the journey worthwhile.
Nice. So David, can you share a bit with us about your background and what led you to a role as a Chief Commercial Officer?
Right. So my path to becoming a Chief Commercial Officer at BirdoTech has been anything but linear. And then that's probably what's make it so rewarding. So I started my career in the pharmaceutical industry more than 20 years ago, as you referred to previously. Initially focused on technical and then operational roles. And early on, I had the chance to work at Lonza. And I actually spent 6 years living in Switzerland, 3 years in Geneva, 3 years in Basel, and also in Visp, where I was exposed to R&D, pilot plant, and large-scale manufacturing and complex supply chain ecosystems. And that experience gave me a solid foundation in how science, logistics, and then business intersects. And then later on, I went to Merck, Thermo Fisher Scientific, where I transitioned more fully into commercial roles. First in strategic sourcing, then into the business development. And that's where I discovered a real passion for commercial strategy and then cross-functional leadership. I love the challenges of navigating different markets, cultures, and regulatory landscapes, all while building a partnership that moved science forward. Right, and then the joint BirdoTech, I just feel like the natural next step. And it was an opportunity to take all the exposure, experience, and help scale a company that's not just serving the industry, but shaping the future of the CDMO industry. Then as a chief to wear many hats, developing long-term strategy, optimize how we serve clients, and building teams that can thrive in a fast-changing environment. But what really pulled me into this role was the chance to be part of something transformative. Right, BirdoTech is at the intersection of innovation and execution, helping pharma partner bring life-changing molecules to market faster, better, and more efficient. Being able to drive that impact globally with a multicultural team is what makes this work deeply meaningful to me.
Nice, awesome. It sounds like you're really passionate about what you're doing right now and what you've got the opportunity to build. If you look back at that point where you jumped into commercial, what inspired you to pursue a career in commercial leadership rather than continuing down the path you were on?
Okay, first of all, from a practicality side, right? In the commercial side, right? It's that there's always, like in a corporation, there's a profit center and cost center, right? And I just from the thinking of it, that how do I add value to the company I work for, contribute myself in the right bucket, right? Which is the profit center. And then where I can pull, if you like, move the company, the front line, so to speak, right? And then with the experience and knowing the all the operation, supply chain side, so I like to be in the front line, right? So that I can see the market, see the change of the business environment. How do I stir the company into the right direction? So that's why in the front line, to help the company.
When some people think commercial, they probably think, sell kind of mentality. Whereas when you're talking about shaping, shaping the industry and shaping the future of the organisation and people's lives. So what's your philosophy or approach towards commercial as compared to what traditionally or typically people might think of commercial?
Right. So what really inspired me to pursue a career in commercial was a desire to be a connector, right? To bridge the gap between the science and then the strategy, between innovation and impact, right? Early in my career, I saw firsthand how the groundbreaking technologies and then promising drug candidates in various clinical trials could struggle to reach patients, not because of science, but because the misaligned goals, inefficient process, or missed opportunity in the market, right? And then I wanted to be someone who could solve those challenges to my ability, right? So my journey across different continents and culture shape how I lead today. I have worked in both, big company, Fortune 500, and then the biggest lesson I've learned, right, is that people are the constant, right? And then success isn't just about having the right product or strategy. It's about having the right people in power in the right environment. So my leadership philosophy boils down to a few things. One is lead with purpose, right? And then the build bridge, right? Not silo, and then invest in people. And also lead by example, right? So in a way, commercial leadership give me the best of both worlds, the ability to drive business outcomes and then develop people and partnership that last. And that's what keeps me inspired every day.
Nice. And it sounds like even when you're talking about the commercial outcomes, leading the commercial outcomes, all of that comes from a place of purpose and the change that you want to see,
Right.
as opposed to we've got this thing, we want to sell it. Instead, it's here's what we're trying to solve. Here's the vision. Here's the direction we're going, and the business, the commercial, is the vehicle to achieving that outcome.
Right, absolutely, Will. One thing is that I don't know whether or not you have experienced, right, is that like, you feel very stressful, right, in the work, right? You have to behind here, behind there, and then delay. But if you if you stop and then think about the purpose of what you are doing, why you are doing, it somehow give me even a stronger motive, like a drive for me to do better, but I'm free of stress any longer because I know the purpose why I'm doing it. Right? Like, for example, in the medicine, I have a problem in supply chain, from raw material to intermediate to API to drug product to shipping, whatever. Like, if there's some problem, right? But if I think about this drug is go to save people's life, it somehow make me not stressful, but meaningful to do what I'm doing.
So people came onto the podcast to listen about leadership and the future of the industry, and they got a great philosophical lesson there from you as well.
Yeah. Just this is my own experiment. I just feel like somehow that stress feeling disappear. If you have the right mindset or understand why you are doing, what's the purpose of what you are doing.
Nice. And how do you find that transitions from like your philosophy and how you lead the team to how the team actually kind of take that on board and sort of live that same philosophy? Or do you have to help people find their own take on that? Like, how do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah. So what I did, right, is that I know that a lot of my colleagues, right, they're also in the same boat, very stressful, which is understandable, right? Because they even complain about the stressful things like that, and then I just in the lunchtime or break or during the one-on-one meeting, I just share my experience with people. Right, and then say try it, right? See if that works for them, right? It's just to understand the purpose of what they are doing will really help them to alleviate the stressful, mindset, right? So it's just sharing, right, at the right moment and also in the more casual moment, right? It's one thing is that in my group meeting, right. I always start the meeting with a safety moment, right? This is actually I learned from when I was working at Merck, right? Is that before every meeting, right? That one person share with the rest of the colleagues about a safety moment. It could be the supply chain related. It could be what you did in your garden over the weekend or swimming pool or the hot weather. How do you, situation, how it's all near miss, right? You can share with people and then you just try to connect with all the people and then encourage them to speak out, right? Like free to speak up, rather than try to have some reservation and express of their opinion, so that we can just be in a boundarylessness environment, right? To just share the experience and then work result, and so make the meeting more efficient.
So it's really about not just the sort of the management side of the business, but it's learning how to connect people.
Right.
Not just on the work, but also emotionally connect by letting some of those barriers down and letting people understand a bit about the people as well as the role, the operation, etc.
Correct.
Yeah, nice. And maybe this brings us on nicely, David, to some of your experience in leading well, it definitely brings us on nicely to the experience you've got leading teams. You've led teams in the US, you've led teams in Europe, you've led teams that cross over into China. What are the biggest kind of cultural challenges that you experience in leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a topic close to my heart. So, having led teams across U.S., Europe, China, right, I've come to appreciate just how nuanced, right, leadership becomes when culture enter the equation. And the biggest cultural challenge, I would like to highlight a few things here. One is one's communication styles, right? So one of the most common challenges is how direct or indirect people are in giving feedback or expressing disagreement. For example, in the US, right, communication tends to be straightforward. People are encouraged to speak out, challenge ideas, and then own their opinions, right? Whereas in China, there is often more deference to hierarchies and to people that may avoid open disagreement to maintain harmony, right? And in part of Europe, let's say Germany, France, you can find both direct and then highly contextual communication. Depends on the environment. So as a leader, right, I have to learn to read between the lines, right? Adjust my communication style and create safe environment where people from all backgrounds feel they are heard, right? And number two is the decision-making approach, right? Cultural expectation around decision-making can vary drastically, right? Again, in US, right, speed, agility are priced, right? And it is often about making quick data-driven decision and then fast, right? And in China, for example, there's a greater emphasis on alignment and building consensus, especially in formal setting. And in Europe, decision making, you probably can tell me more that decision making can be more methodical and then process driven with a strong value placed on a stakeholder engagement, right? That's a sort of European. You can see everything need to think through once, twice, three times, very, very, very methodical. So balancing speed with inclusivity, and especially in the global team, is one of the challenging part of the cross-cultural leadership, right?
On a practical level, David, how do you tiptoe that line? Because they're very distinctly different cultures and they're very distinctly different ways of working. I don't know whether you've ever read a book called The Culture Map, where they talk through and they imagine it on a continuous line, right? And you've got the US is at one end in how literal the language is, and then you've got China, Japan, the cultural. It's all the way on the other end of how implied the language is, and that affects a lot about how decisions are made, etc. So, like, how do you tiptoe that line between two such vastly different cultures and ways of communicating and ways of decision making?
Right. Well, my approach, right, to this situation is I have to face it, and I have to understand it is what it is, right? And then every culture is special, and every culture is very unique, right? We just need to show the respect of the other culture. It's nothing wrong or not wrong or right. And this is it's just that the God created the earth and then the people from different region, different continent, different culture, right? And we just need to respect that's the environment people grew up. And then the way to make the whole world run smoothly is you need to recognize the differences, right? And accept it, right? Face it, right? And then put more care into when you deal with people from a different continent, right? And to really be more sensitive, if you like, to other people's perspective. Right, be more considerate, right? And then that's always my approach, right? Is that that's the way. And then because I can tell you, people usually doesn't like change, right? And also, it's not realistic to make somebody from China to adapt to the U.S. Environment so quickly, and then unless you move to a different country for some time, even that the change will be not fast at all, right? So instead of force something, it need to be the same. Just accept the difference, right? That difference, and then respect the difference, because difference is good, right? If we have all the same thinking like everybody else, right? We probably still in the cave age, right? Because everything's the same. It's the difference, right, that make us change, right? Change to better, right?
So that challenge and almost welcoming the differences gives you an opportunity for innovation, development, new ideas.
Yeah.
Without those differences, you can't have that kind of innovation.
Right, yeah, diversity, right, differences, and then so important things that you need to just distinguish sense from nonsense, right, and then just know what's your goal, what's the end game, and then try to adapt all the cultural differences to benefit your commercial team. What's the result that you are heading to, right? Just utilize all this diversity to your advantage.
I think there'll be a few people listening into the podcast who'd definitely like a bit more information about how you determine sense from nonsense, or at least they'll want their managers and leaders to learn.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, you can hear, right? I mean, when people say something, but
so David, let's imagine you've got a team. Well, no, let's not even imagine. You've got a team right now, and you've had teams in the past. So what strategies do you use to mentor and develop future leaders within these kind of multicultural teams?
To develop the future leader, I would say like in the from the HR perspective, right? There's like a development plan, right, of your colleague. I'm not going to lie, right? Is that I would be doing a disservice, right, if I tell you that I know what you should be doing. You become what, right? Is that actually is like the person working on this role, right? And then there's certain objectives, right? And then the person need to reach because of the training experience the person brought to the table, can contribute to the business, to the company, right? And also in the meantime to better develop himself or herself. But I think my style is very simple, is that so when the person, after maybe half a year or 1 year, and then I always for people who proactive, right? You can see some people have the like a desire to be proactive, thinking, whatever. And then I always ask them, right, in the one-on-one that you don't need to answer me this, but maybe start to think about, right, what you will see yourself in 3 years. What would you like to do, so that we can start to gear yourself, what you do, into that direction to prepare people for the future, because you need to understand what is in it for you, right? So that you have motivation, you can thrive in what you do, you love what you do what you love. And then so that's my very, very like there's no theory, whatever, very simple way, right? Just a talk, and then after a while, right, you're making friends, become friends, and then when people move on, and then there's success. You know what I mean? Like you're networking with a lot of people too, right? So that's my approach.
Okay, so you helping them see a bigger future for themselves, asking where their plans are a few years down the line. That helps you to sort of prepare people for leadership, or at least start thinking about what leadership might look like for them.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it has to come from themselves, right? It's not that.
Okay, tell us more about that.
Well, so like you cannot force people, right? Like if you if you put the lipsticks, right? Pick is still pick.
Yep.
Right. Like somebody are natural leaders, right? Like when you see a leader, you know it, right? That people say that it is actually true, right? I would say 80% of the time it's true. Of course, sometimes there's some hidden quality that I'm actually very sensitive to. I don't want to jump into conclusion right away. It's always with the time, but you have your impression, instinct, and then and also the person need to also show they're willing to, and then. But of course, it's not that people want to always go. Who doesn't want to be promoted, right? But it's in a more strategic way, right? So that we can really have the development plan that's last, right? The last, and then we'll get to somewhere, and then reach the goal for the person.
So David, let's imagine I'm a manager right now, and I'm looking at my team, and you're saying that typically see certain characteristics in people that you see as leaders. What would you be telling me are like the 2 or 3 traits that I should be looking at in my team to help identify people with leadership capability?
Okay, it's the people who are visible.
Okay.
Who are visible, right? In other words, whenever there's some topic, right? Like you always see that there's 1 or 2 people, only the people who talks, right? Who start to show their visibility, right? And then some people quiet, and some people like you don't know whether or not they are there or not. You even don't see them right there. But you have to have an open mind just to assess the whole situation. So the person who speak, right, and then this is something visible, right? So okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is the people who ask questions, right? Who ask good questions. There's a 5 whys, right? Because 5 whys usually, I would say 95% of the time, it gives you the really problem, right? Like in the there's a story in there's a museum of anthropology in Philadelphia that there's a Benjamin Franklin's bronze statue, right? On top of it, there were some corrosions, right? It's a pretty valuable piece of art, and then so they try to find out why the head of this statue was corroded, and then it was because they find out the material was from the poop from birds, right? So actually the bird flew inside the museum, and then why there's a poop, and because there's a flies, okay? Why there's a flies, and because there's a light. Why there's a light? Because there's a picture nearby. So they find, and then because of they really can have a root cause analysis and then change the location and position of the bronze to avoid that situation, right?
I will definitely be using that as an example for people in future when I'm coaching on this topic. That's
right.
For sure.
So just people who ask question, right? And then it's really amazing. I really admire people who is very good, ask right question, right? Because right question really help you to go from A to B right away, rather than it's some people who can see that the rainmaker, that who can see the solution, right? Ask the right question, and then so be visible and ask right question, and then the people who deliver the results, right? Is that some people talks a lot, right, but doesn't do things, right? And that's one need to motivate, right, the person to how to execute, right? Because when you do some research, and then when you do something and then extra to get could have a successful negotiation with a big deal, right? And you really feel that's wow, like a very rewarding, right? Some people just let too much work, right? In other words, how do you unleash your full potential, right? It's basically to combine the visibility and then the question ability and then execution ability, right? So if you combine the three together, then you will see right away. Again, nothing complicated. It's just a very logic, right? Very common sense that people, how do you get the result, right? Using your what's already you don't need to go to a course or something, go to MBA or whatever. It's just like a common sense approach, right?
So for people listening, if there are three tangible bits of advice for potential leaders or for people kind of developing that, wanting to be at the forefront of the team, it's lean in and be visible, be engaged, is ask questions, but not just any old questions, ask good questions, ask the 5 whys and understand what's going on at the root cause. And then the third one is execute, or by the sounds of it, do what you say you're going to do.
Right, absolutely.
Whilst that sounds like a really obvious thing, I know from the conversations I have a lot of that to do what you say you're going to do gets missed a lot, and it feels like one of the most basic things, most fundamental things that we can do that is fully within our power.
Right, right, thank you, Will, for summarizing this. And I think one thing I forget to mention, which is equally important, is listening. Right. So when you ask question, right, because you understand what was the problem, right? Because otherwise you will never ask a question, because it's only when you listen to carefully, right, what people are really saying, what's between the line, and then you can really ask a question. So maybe I should put the listening and ask question together also, including the listening. It's very, very important. So important, yeah.
Couldn't agree more. David, we spent a lot of time here on the leadership piece, and I think it's really important because it was something that you're really passionate about, and I think it's really valuable for the audience. The other thing that we were talking about before coming on air was around the changing landscape for the space, for the industry. And we talked about, this decoupling of globalization, which I think even since we first talked has changed quite a lot. Right. In the last sort of month or so since we were talking. So talk to us a bit about how you see the decoupling of globalization affecting, and specifically how you see it affecting kind of commercial teams.
Right. That's a very, very good question. So the decoupling, right, of the globalization is definitely a game changer, especially for the commercial team. Like I'm seeing, right, a shift away from highly interconnected global supply chain and then business strategy towards more regionalized and localized model. And then I see this trend about 2.5 years, 3 years ago already, right? I think since right after the COVID, I think there's a distrust between countries, and then I think there's some conflict, some regional conflict occurred, and then that expanded a little bit, many in the Europe, and then the Middle East, and then in the Asia part, and then all this, right, impact about the people, the trend, right, presents the challenge and opportunity for the business development or commercial leaders. And then there's a shift, right, to the regionalization and then localization, and increase the complexity in supply chains. Like we see this Suez Canal, the Red Sea, right, from Houthis, rebels, right, and then there's some conflict there, and then also Panama Canal, right, situation. All these are they occupy more than 80% of the world transportation, and then and also changing dynamics in the talent and working force strategy, because after the COVID, right, you can see starting from the government and then actually private, that the banking sector, they really demand the people to come back to work, right, rather than still you can work from home, whatever. And that causes a lot of adjustment, right, again, right, and there's also regulatory and then compliance considerations, and there's always new regulatory changes in the agency, FDA, new compliance, new rules, and then there's also new opportunity for innovation and then customization, and then not to mention digital transformation and technology, the AI thing, and then there's a resilience and then risk management, and then so in summary, right, the decoupling of the globalization will fundamentally reshape how the commercial team operate, shifting from a global interconnected mindset to one that balances the local autonomy with the global coordination. The challenges are pretty significant, right? And then, but so are the opportunity to become more agile, responsive, and innovative in how we deliver value to the customer and partners across the diverse regions. So the key to navigating the shift will be adaptability. So embrace the regional strengths, fostering strong cross-cultural leadership, and staying aligned around a shared global vision, even as we cater to local needs.
It sounds to me, David, that what you're saying here is, yes, it's a challenge, and yes, it becomes more complicated, more complex. There's more, there are more hurdles to overcome. But given that, that is also an opportunity.
It's absolutely, yes. Whenever there's a danger, there's always on the other side, right? The flip side is that there's always an opportunity, right? And then I think one need to strategically look at the whole thing as a whole.
Okay, so if we're looking at, like, with those changes and with that opportunity and everything that we've talked around leadership, if somebody's listening into this podcast right now and thinking about the future of their career, what do you think that they should be thinking about? And what do you think people should be thinking about if they want to accelerate their career? And what kind of skills do they need to be learning? Do they need to be picking up? Do they need to be at the forefront of, in order to stay relevant? Well, not just stay relevant, but to become a high performer and a really successful leader and person at the forefront of this industry? Right.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, and then very difficult question too, right? The reason is that even a lot of people in the college, right, they probably still don't know what they want to do, what they want to become of, right? And then because there's so many fields, right, one can choose from, and then it depends on what's the outcome, what's the end point, right, you want to reach. But the important thing is that always you need to set your mind very free, right, and then start to think about things, thinking out of box, right, and try something different, like have some imagination, and then rather than be a follower, right? Computer science, how about AI, right? Let's go to AI because it's a very hot, whatever. Yeah, you can do a lot of that. There's a lot of opportunity. Like you see Magnificent Seven, all the companies, right? They profit a lot and become the very well thought company, right? Everybody want to work in the Microsoft, Apple, and then the Nvidia, all these big companies. But the thing is that I think you have to see, is this for you, right? And what value can you bring, right, to what you do, to this company, right? Then of course it's good to just get into this field and to learn about it, and then but always thinking out of the box. Can you apply what you learn to many other areas in pharma, for example, in the waste treatment, right, and then the manufacturing? So, in other words, don't limit yourself, right, to certain things, but just stay curious, right? Stay always ask questions, listening and ask questions. I think all this will maybe help you to, at least help you to come to the a decision that what would you like to do right, in the future.
So it sounds like what you're encouraging people to do is more of a self-discovery of what is it that you want, and I guess coming back to your philosophy for yourself of being sort of purposely aligned with what you're doing. Sounds like that's the kind of thing that you're encouraging people to do. Understand what it is that you want from a career, understand where you can add value, understand where you want to add value, and let that steer where you're going, as opposed to a strict get in, do AI, and that's what's going to lead you to money, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. And then we have this mentors, right? Is that if somebody, right, you see somebody, like you would like to talk to, right, to help you to maybe clarify certain things, right, in certain careers, right? Yeah, I think that's, I think one should try to seize that opportunities, right, to just, to get the answer of what you want to know. And then because once you have that, right, you extend your network, and then the question, it's always unknown, right? I'm always want to find out the reason why, right? That's why, and then you have to just so that you can because so that when I've been in the technology transfer, right, area for many 20 years, right? And then when the senior VP or president asked me, right, what's the most important thing in the technology transfer? My answer always been, you need to know what doesn't work. What works, it's all on the report, right? People know what works, but what doesn't work, people have the tendency not to include, but find out what doesn't work. Because when you know what doesn't work, you can better sleep at night, right? So
Okay,
that
what do you mean by that?
because you know, right? I would say 95% of people, they just read the development report of a chemical process, right, before they scale up manufacturing, right? What's the critical process parameter that governs the yield, the quality of the product, right? And then you do what works, right? But when the operator or somebody made a mistake, or the temperature deviate, right? Some deviation, some excursion of the temperature or pH, and then there's a out of spec the quality issue. Because if you know that what doesn't work, right, that you can prevent all these surprises, if you like.
Got it.
Okay, so basically it's just like it's not what works, it's what doesn't work that we have to know even more, so that we can be more proactively. We will prevent the smooth, prevent some troubles, and to have a smooth campaign, right, of manufacturing, something like that.
David, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts today. As we come to an end, I've got the question I'd love to ask is if you've got one piece of advice that you could go back, and I think originally I'd thought of this as one piece of advice you could give to people in the job market right now, one piece of advice to leaders. I think you've shared quite a few bits of advice that are real kind of practical and tactical. So instead, if I was going to ask you to give yourself one piece of advice when you first took on a leadership position, what one bit of advice would you love to go back and give yourself that you think would have been really useful to know?
Right. Okay. So if I had to give just one piece of advice, right, to leaders building a commercial team today, it would be focus on building a culture of adaptability and continuous learning. And the business landscape is evolving faster than ever, and the pace of change, right, driven by the technological advancement and shifting market dynamics and global uncertainty, as we see, requires commercial team to be flexible and then quick to respond. And by creating a team culture that embraces the change, right, and then is committed to continuous learning, you ensure that your team can pivot when needed and stay ahead of industry train and then tackle challenges with innovation. And this mindset, right, empowers the team members to not only adapt to new tools, technology, and strategies, but to proactively seek out new ways of doing things that drive growth.
Awesome. Is that the same bit of advice? Again, if you look back to when you first started leading the team, is that the same bit of advice you'd give to yourself? Whenever it was 15, 20 years ago when you first led a team?
I would say yes, right? Because I did improve, I did learn, right? Curious, right? But it was still the same fundamental, that defines me, right? I have very strong adaptability, right? And I'm always curious. Those things, it was there already, right? It's almost like in the evaluation, right, of your performance, right? You are good in listening to people, and then okay, so that's one of the things that your boss development opportunity. So okay, there's a exceed expectation, meet expectation, and then below expectation. I can always say meet expectation. I cannot be 10 times, listen more, whatever. You carefully listen. You cannot quantify it. You are a good listener, right? Or something. I don't want to say I exceed expectation in listening. It just sounds a little bit funny. So I meet the expectation, so that I listened well before. I still listen well continuously.
So David, if somebody's listening to this podcast today and there's something that's stood out to them, or they think, do you know what, I'd love to ask some questions or some more questions on that, or just want to connect, where best can people connect with you?
Right, LinkedIn, right, and then and also my email is david.co@birdotech.com. I'm always open to engaging with professionals, entrepreneurs in the industry. So don't hesitate to reach out for
Awesome.
discussion. Yeah.
David, thanks so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and what I didn't expect to get out of this was just quite so much philosophy. So thanks for your philosophical take on things as well. Really appreciate your time.
The pleasure is all mine. And then, Will, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I wish you and your audience a joyful and peaceful Easter, filled with hope and renewal and happiness.
Thank you very much. All the best, David. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Leaders of Life Sciences. We hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to lead with clarity and purpose. If you're hiring, building your leadership team, or thinking about your next move, we'd love to support you. You'll find everything you need to get in touch in the show notes. And if you enjoyed the show, please follow and share it with someone who'd find it valuable. Until next time, keep leading forward.